Change means you're getting out of your comfort zone. And getting out of one's comfort zone is the most difficult thing to do. Think about it. Do any of you have something favorite at home? Like a place that you sit, a favorite book, a favorite cup that you have tea in the evening to relax? I know, for instance, I had this cup, and the reason I love this cup was because it was my granddad's cup. And one fine day I found out it had broken. The maid had accidentally broken it, but that's a different story. But it had broken, and it really crushed me. Even though, I mean, except for the emotional and sentimental value it carried, it's just a cup. And the second thing was, that had become a habit, my comfort zone, my go-to place. And now that it was changed, for a moment I was like, what do I do? And now imagine the larger things. And we're going to do that activity today, by the way.
Even traditions.
Yeah, even traditions, same thing. Imagine this. What happened when Basant was cancelled in Pakistan? We're all witness to it, right? Even now we're looking for those friends that still have kites on their rooftop, and we can go sneak there and fly a little bit and then have police raid the place and run out of there. But see, that's part of our tradition. And traditions don't change overnight. Our culture, for instance, as much as we'd like to say this is Islamic culture, but this is a Pakistani culture, which is a subset of the subcontinental culture. It derives from a lot of different cultures. Our language comes from a lot of different languages. We all know the history, right? So no need to go there. And this is how it influences. Slowly and steadily things come in, people start feeling comfortable with something, they adapt it, and then it becomes the new norm. But if you really look at it, nothing has been the same forever. Things have changed. When we talk about things, you'll see a lot of people in the company saying, we've done this forever. But that's not really true. Nobody has done anything forever. When somebody says I or we have done this forever, what they mean is before the last change happened. So all that we need to do is bring about the change. And what's really important is to convince people, to communicate with them, which is what they spoke about, buy-in. And what does buy-in mean?
Convince others.
Convince others. What else?
To start.
Make them feel it's theirs, a sense of belonging. Make them comfortable. See, the reason I always emphasize on ownership or a sense of belonging, and I'll give you an example, and I'm sure you must have read it here or there. When Concorde was, you're aware of the plane Concorde, right? Speed of sound and all that, right? The plane. It's grounded now, it doesn't fly anymore. When France was making that plane, they couldn't figure out, they had a huge problem. And what was the problem? A plane has wings, we all know that, right? Have you ever seen a Concorde either in life or on video or something? And I'll explain as I go along. The problem was that when it reached a certain speed, it wouldn't go beyond that. And they were not sure how to solve that problem. So they're out, there's a big hangar where they design planes and everything, and there's this big table and all these architects and aviation engineers and aeronautical engineers all standing over there and trying to figure out, what should we do? And this one worker, a laborer, a technician, he's standing on the back just looking at them. And he just comes along and he's looking and he's like, hey, what do you want? He's like, well, I see, it's been 2 weeks you guys are on the same problem. Why don't you make the wings like, they come out and they go in as the plane takes off? And that struck them as, that's smart, why didn't we think of that? We were going by the standard design. And then they designed the plane, and 2 things happened in that plane. 1, the cockpit was able to move. And number 2, the wings were able to go in and come out. So that way, when it was going on supersonic speed, it would adjust itself so that it wouldn't tear apart. And they managed to do it because this other person came and suggested something, and they adapted it. And they made it a point to mention it in their books, saying that, this person, I don't remember the name, but they obviously published his name, this person made this suggestion, and then our engineers worked on it. The idea, right? What happens is, if your team, if your employees, if the people around you feel that this is their idea or their idea as well, they're more likely to cooperate with you for a common goal. If they feel it's your idea, and they've just been invited in it, for some reason, because as they say, it's just compulsion. Well, since I'm working here, they need to involve me. He's not going to have buy-in. He doesn't want to do it. You get na? Andar se awaaz aati hai. That's never going to happen, right? So having said that, we're going to skim through the couple of steps where we left off yesterday. Identify the change, and this can be different things. Either you can observe and identify, which is why you have R&D departments in companies. You have risk assessment functions. You have market analysts. The other is when something just happens. The stock market crashed, what are you going to do? The government just toppled somewhere where, as an example, you are, as a company, are mining out of an African country. And suddenly the government has toppled over there. It's a new dictatorship. You've lost all revenue from that site. It just happened. It wasn't in your control. And you had not foreseen this happening. What do? So in some cases, you try to identify it, you try to anticipate it. In some cases, it happens and now you need to react, right? But either way, you identify the problem. This is the challenge. This is the issue. And now we need to address it, right? Look at the details. What happened? Why did it happen? What can I do? Who should I get involved? Go through the details, right? What is going to be your approach? Approaches are different. Do you want to do something organization-wide? Do you want to do something just in that geographic part of the company where that is happening? Do you want to do it for a particular function? Do you want to change the way your operations run? Do you want to change the way the marketing happens, distribution happens? You segment it. Do you want to start it by very, very small subsets of the company? Figure it out. We're going to do that activity, by the way, very shortly. Implementation. Implementation is not very hard if you've done thorough work in the first steps. The reason for that, what's the one biggest problem that you will face during implementation? Resistance. Anything else? I would usually love to say resistance thrice. That's how important it is. The biggest problem that you will face in implementation is resistance. And why is that a problem? Number one, obviously because they're going against the direction that's there. But number two, they're influencing other people who would have otherwise gone with you, and now they are also convinced not to go with you. So the size of your problem is increasing, right? Monitor. And why is this important? Whenever we take some steps, we want to know how it's going. And why is that important? Because we're dealing with people. If history is any proof, people have always proven to be the most unpredictable. So you need to know if the steps that you're taking have the desired result or not. If they're not, change path, course correction. If they are, good, reinforce, right? This is a very, very, very simple change management request process. What happens here? A request for change is received. It happens, and somebody brought it up. We need this to change. What do? You see what the impact is. You analyze the situation. You even analyze the impact, how bad, how good, what's the reach, and so on. And then you either do something about it, or you say, you know what, it's not a problem. We're not going to do anything about it. If you choose to do something about it, what is next? You go through the whole process that we mentioned earlier, and you implement the change. And then you keep reviewing, reporting, and technically going back to whether, again, another change is necessitated, and you follow the same cycle, right? This is very simple. Nothing complicated about this, right? This comes from Cotter's 8 steps, which we did in the Iceberg is Melting. The same 8 steps. Should I go through them again? Number 1, create a sense of urgency. Now, why is that? I'll tell you. A company has different people working in it, different levels of understanding. Usually people who are sitting at the top would look at macro level events, would look at market factors, would look at investment and things of that nature, future outlook, business continuity, and so on, right? People at the absolute bottom would look at every day-to-day stuff, grassroots level. What's happening in the immediate future, today, tomorrow, a week from now. The top would be looking at forecast a year from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, right? When something is identified at the top, you know what? We foresee this to be a problem. As an example, I saw news yesterday, and there's a scientist who's figured out how to store data in DNA. And I guess in about a USB sort of a container around this size, he can pretty much have all the data that Pakistan has right now. That's this much. And this, they say, is the future. What's going to happen right now? There will be companies, early adapters, which are going to go after that technology right now, right? There will be some companies like Nokia. We all remember how Nokia was the cell phone giant, and then finished. Yeah. We remember that time, right? When it was, even in Pakistan, it was Nokia, 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 and 3310 was like the thing. Right? I remember my little cousin throwing the Nokia 3310 from the roof of my house, and believe it or not, when we got down to the lawn, it was still intact. And believe it or not, I mean, my S20, and I think I didn't even drop it like 3 feet. That's it, finish. 3 feet versus 35 feet. So anyways, besides the ruggedness of the mobile, they did not anticipate this happening. They thought because we have the market today, we will always have the market. Just like I'll tell you, are you familiar with BlackBerry? Oh, anybody used it? Me too. Yeah, like once upon a time, BlackBerry was like the thing for officers. It was like right up there. You go into a meeting, and if you don't have a BlackBerry, you're not even an officer. You're like, oh. And the features, and I want to talk about the features because I want to make a correlation there. BlackBerry, way back, had messaging service, BlackBerry to BlackBerry. You just press a button, say your message, and from one BlackBerry user to another BlackBerry user, free of cost, instant message, which today we do on WhatsApp. They had it back then. So if you look at it in terms of their technology, they had a lot of the features that are, king today. They had it back there. So what is it that they did not have? They did not have the farsightedness to plan ahead. When Android was being adapted by a large-scale market, they decided that they just don't want to go with it.
They think they don't need it.
Yeah.
It's a business class thing.
And time has proven that they should have, right? So anyway, so when change happens, usually at the top, somebody makes a decision. And then as it goes down, you need to create a sense of urgency to try to tell people that this is important because. Yeah. And you need to define that, right? Every situation will be different, right? Number 2, guiding coalition. Build a team. People who are going to lead that initiative. Why is that important? And by the way, from the iceberg is melting, a very important point is when he introduces, when the narrator introduces the penguins, he talks about this is No-No. This is Alice, for example. And if you remember, who was Alice? Action person. Alice had the reputation of getting things done, right? Fred, thinker, observer. Keep that in mind. In every organization, you have people. Anybody read The Animal Farm? George Orwell, if I'm not wrong. Animal Farm. Yes, thank you very much. If you get a chance, please read this book, Animal Farm. Animal Farm. Do read it. While it will give you a lot of deep insight into our society, politics, people, and all that, I'm also going to make some connections here. The book talks about people in certain ways, and it associates them with animals. For example, politicians, pigs. I don't know why, but that's how it is. Then there are people who are sheep that blindly follow the leader. Then there are horses who are never question and just do hard work. Never question. Don't doubt the leader. Just keep working and struggling and everything. To the point that at one stage in the book, the horse, who had always been a dedicated, die-hard worker and telling people, don't question, he's done all his stuff, and now he's old and he's probably useless to them. He's being sent off in a carriage, and the politicians, the pigs, unfortunately, with due respect, they're telling all these sheep and duck and rooster and everybody that he's going to a better place, and he'll be taken care of, and blah blah blah. And as that carriage goes away, they kind of show the side, or the book says, and I imagine, but anyways, they show the side which says it's going to the glue making factory. Remember, once upon a time they used to use bones and stuff from horses and cows to make glue. So once his utility was done, they're like, okay, get rid of him. But the projection was different. So anyways, different people play different roles. In an organization, you will have some people, like as an example, in every company I've worked with, usually within the first 6 months, I identify 20 people in the company who are my assets. And what do I mean by assets? If I want something to go across the company without it coming from me, I just tell those 20 people. And then 5,000 people will know within 1 hour. And all these 20 people, I always tell them and say, do not tell anybody. And the moment I say, do not tell anybody, it's just between you and me, I know it's going to get out, right? And we all do that. Whatever company we're in, we have 1 or 2 people that we know, and we know if we tell this to this person, it'll get out to everybody in moments, right? So you need that kind of people. And as we were saying yesterday, the auto ambassadors, people who are just eager to, spread the word. You find them. Then there are people who are no-nos. Avoid them. Unless you don't want something happening, in which case, I really can't comment. But avoid the no-nos. Avoid them. Then there are people who have influence. People who are respected. People whom other people give credence on what they say. These are people that you need to approach and get on board before anything else. Have a conversation. These are smart people, and they're thinkers. They're rarely followers, they're thinkers. And by thinking, what they're going to do is whatever you say, they're going to analyze it. They're going to ask you questions. They might even challenge it. But you need to accept that. You need to answer those questions. Once you've convinced them, their influence will help get your message across to more people. So identify them, right? So build that team. Strategic vision and initiatives. Why is this important? Have you ever heard election time slogans? Yes. Give me an example. Election slogan. Tabdili, wonderful. Roti kapda makan, excellent. What is this? To attract people. It's small, it's catchy. It's very similar to how a company would introduce a vision, a statement. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to be. We will be the best XYZ in this year. We will transform from this to this in this period of time, and we'll be the best. And will be long-term, whatever it is. But you hang on to these jingles. And the reason for that is they're easy for people to understand. It's easier for people to rally behind them, please.
Basically, we can provide the employees a way.
Excellent, yes, a way, a path, a sense of direction. Then what's next? Volunteer army. So they accept decisions, they're extroverts. They're adaptable. Yes, they're brave, wonderful. They're happy to accept challenges, great. So you enlist these kind of people who are, in a one way of saying, they're self-motivated. Yes. And you utilize that energy. And you're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to work with this person. You're going to work with this team. This is what you're going to do, right? Then what else? Removing barriers, enabling, empowerment. How do you do that? As an example, you have a wonderful person who's outgoing, an extrovert, accepting, self-motivated, energetic, and he comes to one department and the head of the department says, I don't want to see you in this department, get lost. What is the poor guy going to do? So what would you do in that case? So what are the steps? And this is excellent. Thank you very much for sharing. Convince, involve an influencer, sit down and communicate. Tell them the benefits of this, convince them, bring them on board, create buy-in. And this buy-in has to be created at multiple levels. So there's a buy-in that was created at this level, but then at the operational level, people know this is going to happen, but so far there's no buy-in, right? And there are two kinds of buy-in. There's one buy-in, which is actually the one that she's talking about, and the other buy-in, all right, management has said this, all right, we'll do it, but they really don't want to do it. And we've all seen that in companies. There are managers, there are department heads who are going to say, all right, you know what, the corporate wants this, all right, fine, but they never really want it. So what they'll do is they'll create barriers at the level that they can. And how do you overcome that? Those are excellent suggestions. Those are very good points to start with. Usually, what I've seen in my experience is that the most difficult person in a company can be won over, one, by granting the other person audience, listening to them. Number two, addressing the concerns they have. And number three, giving them some respect. What normally happens is, because, let's say I am a change agent. I am that auto ambassador. And now I have a mandate by the company. I have been appointed by the HR head or the CEO or somebody like that, right? And I'm all hyped because, you know, I've been appointed. I'm special. When I go there, I'm like, who is this guy to say no? I mean, the CEO told me. So it's like, you know, I've got 5 stars here right away. And because of that ego, I want to bulldoze the other person. And always remember, you cannot bulldoze change. You will have to understand that the other person has a department. He has influence in that department. If you're able to convince him and create buy-in and bring him on board, he will do the same with everybody without your involvement. So you win one person and you win the entire department automatically. But if you tickle his ego, you will have very difficult time convincing anybody else, right? Then what else? Generate short-term wins. So the auto ambassador did this. They went into the department, they won over the manager, they've got that done. Now what? Get people together, call the auto ambassador and celebrate. Hey, this person has done a great job, wonderful, clapping, you know, here's a medal or here's an award or here's a gift that we want to give you. What do you think Employee of the Month is? Acknowledgement. Celebrating every month something good that somebody has done, and it motivates people. For example, I've seen companies celebrate even personal things. As an example, you went for an exam which had nothing to do with the company or, you know, what's done over here, and you got great marks, you passed in the first attempt or something, and the company will just celebrate that. You know, rolling out a simple email across the company saying this person has done this, and, you know, join us in congratulating this person. And as a person in the company, when you're walking down the hallway, somebody else comes up and says, hey, aren't you the one who did that CHRP? And oh, congratulations. You just feel so good. I mean, you've got no money. You've not got any medal. You've got nothing to show for it, but you feel good. And because you feel good, now you want to do something else, right? So anyways, going forward from that, short-term wins, and then sustain it.
Continuous.
Sustained progress.
Sustain progress. How do you sustain progress?
Continuously.
One very interesting thing I've always heard in my life is, it's not a big deal to get the first position. Maintaining the first position is even more difficult. And that's the same thing that applies here. Once you have made a change, the hardest thing is maintaining that change, sustaining it. I'll give you an example. And I studied anthropology of Islam once upon a time. And we studied certain African villages. And there were these people who were spreading the message of Islam around the world. And these group of people who were doing tabligh, they got into Africa and they went into these villages, and these villagers were people who had their witchcraft and kind of the stuff that you see in all these Indian and cowboy movies, what they show Indians doing, right? Fire and powder and sorcery and all that stuff. And they went there and started teaching them about the Quran, about the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and the prayer and how to pray, how to be clean, blah, blah, blah. Well, what they used to do was, they would be there for like 60 days. They would teach, they would convert, they would do everything. And they would appoint a couple of people out of the same crowd whom they would train a little more, that, okay, you're going to sustain the change, and then they would move on. Next village, next village. 2 years later, when they came back, they were shocked because now they saw this very different thing happening over there, which was a mixture of some Islam and a lot of their previous culture. And somehow they had mixed that with the teaching that they've got, and they had developed something absolutely new. And these guys were like shocked. And then they started a different practice. They would leave some of the elders, some of the people who were practicing and who had a good knowledge with those people for an extended period of time. So these people who already had the knowledge, who already were practicing, would stay with them for like a year or 2 years or even 3 years until they felt that these things were sustained and then reinforced and frozen. Sir, kaise hain aap? Great, glad to have you. What else? Institutionalized change. Tell everybody, you know what, change is good. Now that you've changed, what happened? Are you happier? Most people are going to say, oh yeah, now we're happy. Because usually the resistance is at the beginning. By the end, when you've seen some benefit out of the change, now you're feeling happy, right? If today, right this instant, for example, and I'm going to use that example in a few minutes, if I were to say, everybody needs to wear green every day, what do you think? Will you do it? Will you not do it? Every day. Green, yeah. Yes, specifically green, and maybe just one shade of green. Something like North Korea, I don't know. That's difficult, right?
You'll object first.
You will object. You all like to object, don't you? All right, we all do. We all object. And then you think a lot about it, right? I'll give you an example of this tribe in the African desert, near the Sahara. In their local language, they're called, translated into English, they're called the Blue Bedouins. And why are they called blue? Because they have a bluish tinge to their skins. And why do they have that? They wear cloth which is dyed in blue, and that's what they wear all around. Why do they do that? It's really hot there. And this particular blue dye that they've developed over centuries, when they dip their cloth in it and they wear it like a turban and around their faces and everything, they're protected from the ultraviolet radiation of the sun. They're cooler. And they become less thirsty, right? So the whole tribe does it, and they're all happy. So the first day when somebody from their tribe and said, we are going to wear blue every day now, everybody said, no, why? We're white, but I like black, I like green, I like yellow. Somebody else is like, I don't want to wear anything. I just like it this way. I have great hair. Somebody obviously not like me. So once you go through all that, what happened? One fine day, due to whatever reason, 2, 3, or 4 people adapted it. They went out in the desert, and they came back, and they were looking rather fresh. So what happened? By a certain example, the other people are like, why are they looking fresh? By this time, these guys should be exhausted. They're not looking that bad. And looking at that, some other people adapted it, and then some other, until the whole tribe follows it, right? But if this instant I were to say that all of you would wear green, you would resist. I don't think even one of you is going to say, yes, sure, I would love to wear green for the rest of my life. Unless you have your own reason. I don't know, right? So, moving on. There are 2 kinds of forces whenever you want change to happen. Anything whatsoever. There are 2 main forces. And what are they? What's a driving force? The leadership, the go forward types, the positives, we need to do this. Restraining forces, no, we don't want to do this. We should not do this. Let's not do this. This is why we should not do this. And what happens is, and this is a wonderful activity, just like you do pros and cons. Now, pros and cons is, this is the benefit, disadvantage, right? Benefit, disadvantage, right? In terms of restraining, what's going to happen is, there's actually a very logical reason why you don't want to do it. The only thing you're trying to see is that at the end of your discussion of restraining and driving forces, which part comes out more powerful? Which part has more advantages? If at the end of the day you see that yes, we have more advantage to do this change, to make this change happen, do it. But it will only come out of a debate, right? So let's do something. This is what you were talking about, freeze, unfreeze, right? There's a reason why I put this little foundry cauldron over here. I used to work with KSP Pumps at one time, and they have a huge foundry in Hassan Abdal, and I used to spend a lot of time there. What would happen is, for example, they had to make a huge elbow joint. Are you familiar with an elbow joint? Have you ever seen plumbing, like pipes?
Yes.
Yeah. So when a pipe is going straight, there's this need to curve it at one side, like with the wall at a corner. That little thing, just like the elbow, is called an elbow joint, right? So for instance, they needed to make an elbow joint for a desalination plant in Jeddah, right? Obviously, but this desalination plant does hundreds and millions of tons of water every day. So these elbow joints are huge, right? Number one. Number two, they're made of special metals to give them certain properties, right? Agreed? I mean, I know about this, but you guys should feel free to challenge me at any time. Just letting you know. All right. What are the properties that we wanted to give it? This obviously salt water, so we want it to be rust resistant, right? There's a lot of water and there's a lot of pressure, so we want it to be pressure resistant, stronger, right? So what they would do is, they would have these kind of huge cauldrons, electrically charged, and the metallurgist would come and he would put in certain metals in certain quantities to give it a certain type, right? So far so good. Once it was molten, they would put it into a mold. We all know what a mold is, right? Cast, a hard die cast. Once they put it in there, literally within minutes, it would kind of solidify. Then they would break off the cast, break the sand, and what you would have in front of you is a glowing red hot elbow joint. Glowing red hot. I mean, the elbow joint would be back over there and you can feel the heat here. Then they would pick it up and they would put it in water. And when they would put it in water, it would obviously cool really fast, but it's still pretty hot, right? It would go from red to black or dark gray, but cool down. But then they would pick it up again. And now they would put it in an oven, 2400 degrees for 15 minutes. Then they would take it out again and cool it. Then they would put it back in, 1200 degrees, 20 minutes. And again, it's red, but not as red as before. They take it out, cool it again. Then they put it back in, now 600 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 minutes. Take it out, cool it. And they would do this process a couple of times. I was obviously intrigued. I was like, what's going on? So when I asked the people there, they explained to me. They're like, you know what? All this metal, all the bonds within the metal, they're in different directions. When we heat them to X temperature, they formulate in a certain direction, and then we cool it to freeze it there. Then we reheat it to a different temperature, so the ones that we want to stay where they are will stay, but the others, which are affected by the other temperature range, which is lower, they will change. And then we freeze them individually in their place, until eventually, once we've gone through this process, we get the exact properties that we want. Freeze, unfreeze, refreeze. Unfreeze, no, it should be unfreeze.
Freeze and refreeze.
Yes.
Freeze, unfreeze, refreeze.
Freeze.
Reheat as well.
Reheat as well. But what are we doing here? Let's just read it off the board. Unfreeze. So you're in a certain state and you decided to not be in that state anymore. Right? Do whatever changing you need. So you're reheating, you're putting in the directions, you're making the effort, and then refreeze. And essentially what's happening at this stage, linking it to what we were discussing earlier, sustenance, institutionalization, you're making change a habit. You want people to understand that change is important, change is necessary. So one cycle of change that you go through, don't make that the last session that you go through.
Yes.
You have to help people understand that now that we've gone through change and it works and it's good, now this is something that we need to keep doing and in different aspects, right? This is simple, I took this off the internet, and there's a very easy way of doing an analysis whenever you're faced with a change challenge. What are they talking about? 4 grids. You've got short-term and long-term goals. Short-term within 6 months, long-term more than 6 months. And you've got your threats and opportunities. Threats, if you do not change. Opportunities, if you do change. And you list down in each of them. Once you've listed it down, written it down, you start discussing it. And so it's a very good point to start off a discussion about change whenever that happens, right? This is a task for you. I'd like you to give it a moment to read this, and then we'll start. All right, here's the change you have to make. You are an HR manager for a certain company. Everybody wears business casual, or absolutely casual. Let's make it that. Everybody wears casual. T-shirt, jeans, everybody wears that. And the mandate from the top is that, you know what, we're a very professional company now, suddenly. We've got really professional clients who are going to come and visit, and this is not the impression we want to make. And you need to implement this change where you need to get all your employees to start dressing formal. Prepare a list of reasons why you want that to change. Okay, now, I've already told you that it has to change. So there's no question of why it should not, right? Now you as an HR manager, you as the leader of that change have to figure out why. Some things I've already told you. Clients, new business direction, blah, blah, blah. Others you can think of, be creative. Consider pros and cons. So first, you write down 2 or 3 reasons why you think it should happen. Because these are the reasons you will be telling your people, right? Number 2, pros, if you do this. Cons, if you don't do this. There's no other option here because that's your mandate, right? Consider business and personnel impact. I'll help you through this, don't worry. I won't leave you guys alone. Identify your vision for your decision and then map your anticipated plan. All right, so let's start with the first. Prepare a list of reasons why you want this change. And what is the change? I'd like you to write down 1 or 2 points. Just write them down and then we'll read it aloud. And then everybody who has the same point can raise their hand. So we're doing an activity and we're going from casual clothing to business professional attire. So it's a task. The change that we want to implement is that everybody in the company used to wear casual clothing. But now we've received, as an HR manager, we've received a mandate that we need to get all employees to now wear professional clothing.
Okay, dress
right?
code.
Dress code, yes. The reason is people love the clothes that they wear. I remember I used to work for a company, and there was this lady, with all due respect to her, she used to come to office every day as if she was going to a wedding. Believe me, she was so prepared and she had all this amount of work done on her garara and everything, and nail polish, makeup. I mean, it was just impossible for somebody like me to understand, who kind of shaves after 3 days because it's just too much work every morning. Mashallah, every day she would come to work and she'd have all these bangles and stuff. It was literally like if she's not coming from her own wedding, she attends a wedding every day. There are people. Now, the day we told her that she needs to dress professionally, she said, I quit. See, I've heard a lot of things. You'll see, I'm sure all of you have done some kind of an interview. And interviews are interesting. You would sometimes have people coming in an interview who are wearing shalwar kameez. You'll have people who come in wearing suit. You'll have people coming in wearing jeans, t-shirt. You'll see females wearing shalwar kameez. There'll be females wearing dress and a coat, right? And then you'll have a lot of male who would come in, long hair, what is that called? Earrings, a lot of gold teeth. You might have females who come in with one of those things where the 6 piercings. I've never understood how that works, but I've seen it, right? I had a female team member once tell me, there was this girl who came in for an interview and she had a huge amount of makeup on. And I just couldn't understand it. So I asked my colleague, and guess what she said? She's like, so maybe she enjoys doing it. I mean, it's so normal for her, right? But the point I'm trying to make is, it doesn't matter what you're wearing. What really matters is the culture of the company that you're going to for the interview. If you want to be employed there, then I'm sorry, there has to be alignment. If you don't want to be employed there because their culture doesn't suit you, please don't go and waste their time and yours. If that company says, you know what, you're wearing shalwar kameez, we don't allow shalwar kameez. And if you wear shalwar kameez, that's how you are, it's better you don't join them. I've seen some people who wear, for example, who wear shalwar kameez, who don't like wearing pants. They wear pants for the interview, and once they get the employment letter, next day they come in shalwar kameez and there's a huge fiasco. I've seen that happen. I have seen girls come in for an interview without any hijab, normal, dupatta and everything. And then suddenly first day you come, you're like, who are you? And they're in that ninja niqab. And you're like, the security at the gate is like, who are you? And they're like, I'm that person. And they're like, and suddenly there's religious thing and all. So I mean, why would you portray yourself differently during the interview? Yeah. Be comfortable. Who you are is who you are. Be that, and if the company values your skill set, they'll hire you. And if the company culture is that they would like to value your appearance more than your skills, then maybe they're not the company for you, right? Simple choice. All right, coming back to this. There are two aspects you're talking about. One is a company you already work for, and one is a company that you're going to go in new. So number one, you're going into a company which is new. You don't know anything about it. Be yourself. I don't like dressing casual. I like to dress formal. I was unfortunately brought up that way. So I'm cool with it. I've worn a tie all through my high school. Like I graduated from Government College Lahore. So as a Ravian, I wore a tie. So when I went into my bachelor's abroad, I stopped wearing ties. So I don't. Unless I'm under strict corporate compulsion to wear a tie, I don't. But I'd wear a suit. Another friend I have, he hates suits. Every time you see him, he'll have jeans and a polo t-shirt. For him, polo is formal, and a round neck t-shirt is informal. That's his definition, right? What happens is when you go in for an interview, dress the way you're comfortable. If you are comfortable, like for example, now I don't feel very comfortable in a tie. So I avoid it. Why? I'd rather be myself than be uncomfortable in a public setting. So as an example, if I wanted to put an impression on you, I'd wear a tie. I don't know what kind of impression that was, but let's just assume that I have it in my mind that a tie makes me look better or more professional. But if I were wearing a tie, maybe I wouldn't be as confident because internally I would feel awkward. The other is, if you're working in a company already, what's so difficult about company culture if you're already working over there? I'll give you an example. The company I work for, ITC, we don't allow shalwar kameez for men. That's a rule. Every year, people will come around with new solutions on how shalwar kameez should be allowed on Friday or shalwar kameez should be allowed on Saturday and Sunday. And every year, I have to unfortunately object to it and say no. But at the same time, another argument that I get is, but girls are allowed to wear shalwar kameez. But at the same time, their point is, girls are allowed to wear shalwar kameez and or pants or shirts, right? T-shirts. But guys, they're not allowed to wear shalwar kameez, right? But that's what we are. We let everybody wear whatever they are, but we have this slight objection on saying, you know what, shalwar kameez. Why? Because at a certain time in history, we allowed shalwar kameez, and we were expecting people to be nicely dressed, like Vakil Saab there, basket, professionally dressed. But then people started coming to the office where it was difficult to tell whether you'd just gotten out of bed or you'd actually come to work. So at least by having some essence of dress code, all right, wear jeans. Now, the thing about jeans is even if it's worn a couple of times or many times, it still kind of looks okay. But with a shalwar kameez, you need to be really sure. I mean, for example, this gentleman is wearing shalwar kameez, mashallah, it's all pressed up, wrinkle-free, it looks nice. He's wearing one with a basket, looks really nice. But I can always tell you that when you're talking about kids, especially those that have fresh come out of universities and are living in hostels, their life is really different. For them, it's easier to just come home and put up a t-shirt or something which is pressed and kind of casual, as opposed to maintaining a shalwar kameez. But that's reality. For the women, I've seen them in our culture to be much, much more careful and meticulous. Even if you get a girl who's just graduated and she comes in for the interview, if I've interviewed 100 girls, fresh graduates, and 100 boys, 100 out of 100 girls have come in meticulously dressed, and only 60 out of the 100 have come meticulously dressed for male, unfortunately. I'm so sorry, guys. Can we go back to the topic? So what are the reasons? Why do you want to change it? Let's start. We're going to start with you. Company image. You?
Good impact on our customers.
Good impact on customers, sir. Same thing?
To get more business.
Ooh, to get more business. I don't know how, but that's an interesting point. Sir?
Innovation.
Innovation. Interesting.
To maintain office decorum.
Anything?
Like, yeah, that look graceful. It look professional, and it will bring a uniformity among the resources that how they are going to dress up.
Cool. Innovative way. And what else?
Energetic and
Energetic. Interesting. That's a good point. All right. For a moment, all of you are no-nos. Give me a reason why we shouldn't. You're all people who always say no. Just presume that for a moment, that you're all people who say no to change. So now we're doing the other side. First you thought of why we should do this change. Now you're all no-nos, the ones from the iceberg is melting. I'm sorry, you weren't here at that time. So you're all no-nos. So now I need an immediate reason why you would not want to do this.
Because I feel comfortable
In what you're already wearing. Cool.
I don't have that habit.
The habit, excellent. What else?
Change is difficult.
Change is difficult. So now consider the pros and cons for your people. We've all discussed why we want the change. Now, I am a no-no and all of you are yesers. So I am telling you the same thing you told me. I don't want to change. I don't like to dress that way. I am more comfortable this way. Why should I change? Now consider business and personnel impact. All right. We were talking about changing the business attire. What happens next? Business. And we've spoken about it, so I'll quickly summarize exactly what you guys have said. Clients could come in, it puts an impression. If somebody is an officer in your company, you would like him to look like an officer.
Professional environment.
You want the environment to be professional. What about the people? So we've spoken a couple of points for the organization. What about the people? And the people, again, the same points you've said. I'll extrapolate quickly from that. People might have budgetary constraints. Maybe somebody has certain clothes which he's brought because he either liked them or that's what he used to wear. Now you've changed it. He just doesn't have the budget to buy those. Do you know what used to happen way back in mid-2000s? General Musharraf was in control and he brought in the telcos, right? New job opportunities. Excellent. People were so happy. Now what would happen? They wanted to attract people to the call center industry, right? And people didn't want to work in the call center, right? We didn't know what it was. It was kind of really strange for us. 24-hour job, night shift, really weird for us. We were not exposed to that, right? What did they do? They would hire in bulk. And the day they would give you an offer letter to join, they would also give you a check for 10,000 rupees right then. And at that point in time, they'd say, for 4,000 rupees, buy a great telephone mobile set. And the rest of the money, buy yourself 3 dress pants and 3 dress shirts. Those are the dress pants and shirts you're going to wear to work every day. They created the culture that they wanted. And now the same person who was like, call center job is now like, call center job. And he would come there wearing pants, shirt, and these kids started having a second shirt on top because they'd come on bikes and they wanted to have another shirt on top so their shirts won't get messy. Then they institutionalized the identification card. If you did not have your card, you could not enter the premises. May you be a call center agent or may you be a senior vice president. If you don't have that card, you can't enter. Sense of ownership with the card. They built that culture. And by giving people that money, they addressed the number one problem people had. Money. These are kids, they're fresh graduates, they didn't have enough money. And now you're saying, you know what, I don't like you dressing in jeans or t-shirt. What's he gonna do? So you've given him the money, and you've also given him a direction and guidance, right? So, personal impact. I've given you one example, budget problems. Why this change would be difficult for them. Just by looking at these preferences, you can make up your mind how you would strategize, right? So maybe shopping is important for her, and it's a factor, because that's how she is. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe I buy my clothes once a season for the whole season. I've seen a lot of men and women do that. They would buy their clothes for the whole season in the beginning, and then they would wear them out throughout the season.
Yes.
They will not buy something new.
Yes.
There are other people who would buy something new literally every time they get a chance. Oh, my niece smiled today. I need to go get a new dress. And I've seen a lot of people do that. When I was in university, I used to have one jeans, Levi's, and I used to have like maybe 20 t-shirts. And that same pant would survive through me.
Injustice for that pant.
I don't know. It was a very loyal pant. It was more loyal than a lot of friends I knew. All right, now that you've considered business and personnel impact, now identify your vision for your decision. Your decision is that you're going through. How you're going through, you're going to look at people's budgets, you're going to look at people's preferences, and you're going to address them, right? You're going to explain to people what the benefit is, right? So, what's your vision going to be? Tabdili? Anything else?
Discipline.
MashaAllah. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm right here.
That work?
Alhamdulillah, yes, it does. It works. If you imagine, you'll get there. Yes, that is very true. You have to dream it for it to become true. Sir? MashaAllah, sir. Excellent. Vision, and you get there. What's your vision going to be for this clothing change? Dress code policy.
Create a company culture.
Create a new culture, all right? And I quickly come and say, what, why? Give me a reason.
Discipline. Good impression.
Good impression, discipline.
Or professional development.
Now you need to fit all of that into your vision. How do you do that? We'll come to that. Identifying your vision. Map your anticipated action plan. This is interesting. I would like you to go step by step, and this time I won't want no repetitions. So if somebody says a point, nobody else gets to repeat it. It's once said and gone. What's going to be your action plan? And we would like to start from the first point. Map your anticipated action plan. You have identified the problem. You have looked at the pros and cons. You have decided your target audience. You have communicated. You have brought in people on board. All you have to do now is map your action plan, step by step. This is what I'm going to do. I joined a company, and the person who was there before me was given the task of changing the dress code policy. And people were all mostly call center people, and they would dress very casually. And the dress code was implemented. And by implemented, I mean it was written down and announced. And there was very strong backlash from the employees to the point that the policy had to be withdrawn. So when I joined, that was the first objective I got. So this is how I did it. And I successfully implemented it. Number one, I took the mandate. Number two, I went out and met all the people. And I very connivingly asked them why they didn't accept the last policy. Simple question. And I got a lot of feedback from people. For example, call center agents. They're like, well, we're on the phone in the call center. Why do I have to wear formal attire? I mean, I'm not doing any public dealing, right? And plus, their favorite quote, my voice is my smile. Number two, this is the wardrobe I have. I don't have formals, right? Number 3, my supervisor wears the same thing I do. So what did I do? 3 issues. So number 1, we started from the top. Everybody, the managers, up to the supervisors, in phases started dressing formally. We didn't announce the policy. We got them in small focus groups and we said, this is what you're going to do. Now, any supervisor or manager who said, usually managers are more well off so they could do it, but a supervisor who said, you know what, this is my wardrobe, we asked them when they could change it financially, and they were like, well, when we get paid next month. Fine, you have until the end of the first week of next month. They did it. Once their team members started seeing them over a period of a week or so wearing formals, then we had a town hall, communication. And we started telling them, you know what? Yes, you're sitting over there, but if you dress business formal or business casual, you will also feel that way. If you are dressed extremely casual, you're going to feel that way. And this will sound off in your communication. Number 1. Number 2, we have client visits and it looks professional. You're working for one of the top companies in Pakistan, would like that to be exhibited in the way that you dress, right? And number 3, yes, we know you don't have a wardrobe, so we're going to give you 2 months to get it done. And by the end of that period, the entire company was aligned on that dress code, no exceptions. And yes, finally, exceptions. What was the exception? Once we'd implemented it, we got people, just like you spoke about the agriculture sales team, we had people come in from technical support. And they're like, well, I can't wear dress pants because I have to be behind PCs and systems, putting in the cables and pulling them out. And so I need to wear jeans. And then we're like, yes, good business case. You're right. It's an absolutely correct requirement. Sure, exception granted, right? So what did we learn out of this? Top to bottom, prepare the organization for change. Design a vision and plan for a change. See, it's very easy for us to talk about things in a classroom where we could shoot things out and we can say, hey, yay, nay, whatever that we want. But in an organization, you need to jot these things down. You need to write them, and you need to create buy-in. And always remember, one plan is not it. It will keep changing and it will keep evolving. Implement the changes. We have spoken a lot about implementation, I hope. What my take is really doesn't matter. The company or the corporate take is what really matters, number 1. Number 2, as an organization, you make certain decisions. And when you make decisions, sometimes they're very hard decisions. Which brings us to this point. If the organization one fine day decides that yes, having that image is more important to us than skill, in the case of a couple of people, then I'm sorry, that's the case it is. As an example, when you talk about the airline industry, people working in the airline industry, similar to the banking industry, wear ties and suit every day to work, every single day. People associated with those industries do the same, because those are the people that they're going to deal with every day, right? I've seen this. For example, I worked with a logistics company and their air department, I mean, you could see it. We had this huge logistics company and there was this which was air division and this which was sea division. And C division was like t-shirts and pants and that kind of stuff. And this was air where everybody was in a tie and suit at all times. They could be working late, 9, 10 p.m. and they'd all be in suits and ties. Because the people that they've met with in the airline industry dressed that way. So in a way, their industry decorum was that, right? So it really brings you to those tough choices. And it depends on what your corporate decision or the culture that you want to implement across the organization is. Embed changes within company culture and practice. As an example, Google decided some years back that it's not going to bother with degrees. So it doesn't. How many companies in Pakistan do you know that don't bother with degrees? See, what happens is initiative that is taken on an extremely small scale within one small subdivision of a company is not really a culture, right? What I would call really culture is something that happens at an organization level. When I'm talking about Google, it's across the board for them, right? If I talk about, you mentioned NetSol, similarly, Systems, for example, a couple years ago, started this initiative for AI trainings. So they would charge people from the market, bring them in, do AI training for a month, give them a certificate, and send them off. But out of that whole batch, if they found 1 or 2 people that were really good, they would hire them. I, for example, was fortunate or unfortunate to evaluate a couple of those people, and the ones who passed that certificate, and I did not really found that to be worthwhile. Could be my own bad experience, I don't know, but in my opinion, when you do something, you should make it worthwhile, right? So, when I would talk about organizational change, I would talk about organization-wide, not a very small, I don't even want to use a phrase for it. Review progress and analyze results. So you keep reviewing your progress. If you need to change, you change. Course correction. This is extremely important. Never think that if you have made one strategy, it will be the best or it will be workable forever. It will not. It will keep changing, and the best strategy is only that which is fluid and keeps improving. And what are key factors in change? We've discussed managing change, organization culture. Typically, you'll come across 4 people. The no-nos are the people who are critics. Then there are victims. It's like that person who comes in, do you value me or do you value my clothes? Yeah. Oh my God, shit, you did this and I'm ruined for whatever reason. Then there's a bystander who's like, change comes, change goes. Yeah. I don't care. Yeah, I mean, these are people who just don't bother with anything. They're like just there. And for me, they're like people who are like ostriches with their head in the ground. Something is happening, they don't care. Things will change. And a navigator, which is the person you're looking for. A person who's able to help you change, who will change with you. And there are other factors which impact this, such as the size of the organization, the speed of that change on your side, and the speed of acceptance of that change from your employee side. Both of these things matter. And finally, as always, never, never, never discount resistance to change. Now, we've spoken a lot about change management. We have not spoken about a change manager. These are the competencies that you look for in a change manager. It could be an HR manager. It could be a department head. It could be a line manager. It could be a team lead. You're looking at a person who has a deep understanding of the business process, excellent communication, a person who is able to manage stakeholders. And what do I mean by managing stakeholders? Remember that manager when you came in and he wouldn't listen to you? And then you sat with him and you spoke to him, you communicated, you convinced, created buy-in? Stakeholder management. Then that person is able to consider knowledge transfer. As an example, in this particular case, what if that person left? The person who said, do you value my attire or do you value my skill? If he were to leave, how would you manage that knowledge deficit? It's very easy to say, you'll find a replacement, but can you really replace that knowledge immediately? No. Right? You need to plan for it. Training and support for the change. Managing the risk and issues. Managing the process itself. You will have a lot of auto ambassadors. You will have a lot of people who will be part of the change army, change agents, but then you also need somebody who's going to be managing that change. Do we agree so far? These are just all kinds of change that we've read. People and cultural change, structural change, downsizing, remedial, developmental, incremental, relocation, downsizing. I could come up with these. I'm sure you can come up with more. Like nowadays, it's not about downsizing, it's about extreme growth sprouts.
Expanding.
Yeah.
It's all about expansion of the company.
All about expansion nowadays. This is where I will leave you, and this is my summary for the entire course. Change is inevitable. Change is constant. You cannot change anything alone. And change is feared, and that needs to be addressed. Thank you very much, everybody. You've been awesome. It was lovely being here and being part of this group. So drop me a message. We can get in touch. If you have any queries, if you have any questions, concerns, projects, available. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.